And welcome in everybody to the High Low Sports Podcast, and welcome aboard to what will be the first of a new series here on the podcast known as MMA Mondays. So on MMA Mondays, what I'm going to do is it's going to be either right after a big event, right before a big event, or maybe sometimes a little bit of both. We're going to look at some of the major fights, recap them, take a look at them, preview them, both from a little bit of an analytical standpoint as well as a fan standpoint as well. Just kind of get a feel of what's going on inside the cage and see what we want to do moving forward for some fighters, as well as what we think is on the line. So just a fun little MMA show so I could talk about a little bit about what's going on for some of our fight fans out there. And we're going to get right into it. We had the battle of heavyweights, some big old heavyweights going on in the PFL. Francis Ngannou taking on Renan Ferreira, and was basically dubbed as two massive men, 6'8" Ferreira. Francis Ngannou, we already know how giant of a human he is. It was a pretty anticlimactic fight as far as a competitive standpoint goes. Dramatic end, ends in the first round. Francis Ngannou shows off a very underratedly complete MMA game as he actually secures a takedown. He lands some massive leg kicks, ends up winning the fight on the ground with some major ground and pound. Made it look relatively easy, you could say, as well. A very one-sided fight. What I thought was very interesting is we're fast running down the stretches. Not only did he show control on the ground, but he showed just massive ground and pound. Some of those shots sounded like a shotgun going off when I was watching it. What I think was very impressive about it too is he didn't give up control. Ferreira looked kind of lost, so it could be more of that. He just didn't know what to do. And when Francis hits you once, it feels like the end of the world. So then when you keep piling on like that, that could have been what it was more than anything. But Francis with a huge win. I think the first time we've seen him in the MMA cage in like 3 years as well. So I thought that was very interesting. So I always do kind of wonder, is where we can see him again very soon? Is he going to go back to boxing? I think that's kind of the big question we have here is what is next for Francis Ngannou? Obviously a lot of people know kind of what was going on with his son, especially the last handful of months too, losing his son Kobe. He was very emotional talking about it afterwards. So obviously big condolences to his family with that as well. What I want to see with him next is I do think he's going to try boxing again. I think that's something that I feel like his heart is still really in. So I do see him dabbling in there a little bit. And that'll be kind of while he waits for a PFL heavyweight contender. If he does go into boxing, I really hope I don't want them to give him these big name guys. I don't want to see a Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, Usyk, Deontay Wilder, anything like that again. I just put that on the back burner. We got that a couple of times. It was fun. If he wants to, maybe try a boxer a little bit lower level. He is supposed to be the draw, so don't try and match him up with somebody huge like that. Because we do kind of have to see someone in PFL emerge as a heavyweight contender. At the end of November, we do have a great matchup between Denis Goltsov, I believe is his name. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. And Oleg Popov. Two guys with 3 wins each in 2024. Popov with a TKO and 2 decisions. And then Denis with 3 TKOs. So winner of that fight feels like it's a shoe-in to be challenging him next. I can't wait for that one. I think that'd be a very fun matchup. So I think while he waits for the dust to settle there, maybe he dabbles in boxing if he wants to continue competing. That's the big question as well. If he wants to, I think one of those guys is the match for him. I don't want him to dabble in boxing so much. I love him in the MMA cage as a selfish fan perspective, and I think that's where he's at his best. And we saw that evolution in his game with these takedowns, utilizing some kicks as well. But we will have to see, but that's what I'd like to see next. Obviously, if I could have my way 100%, we would get Francis taking on John Jones. Whether John wins against Stipe or not, I don't really care. We've seen him fight Stipe twice. Stipe's 1,000 years old, so if Stipe does pull off that win against John Jones, that's incredible. But I want to see Francis and John Jones. That is the two kings in the jungle. We've seen them both face off at a PFL event before. That's just the fight I'd love to see, but I don't think it's ever going to happen. That involved PFL and UFC basically working together, and UFC is more or less as the main draw. Understandably so. It said they are never going to cross-promote like that. So I don't blame them because they have the least amount to gain. And at the same time, Dana and them they're not going to do that if for no other reason than it make Francis look like he won on top of it. I'm not going to say they're petty, but they like to win, and this is a situation they're trying to win, and they don't need to because they are still the UFC. They still have the brand. This would be more or less for us is that we want it more than needing it. Like they'll be fine with that. I just want it selfishly because that is the matchup we all want to see, and it's not too late as John gets older and Francis gets older, but it feels like we could have got this 15 months ago. It would have been prime. It would have been wonderful, but still would love to see it. But that's kind of what I think will happen next for Francis. So after we got a chance to look back, let's go and take a look forward as we got a incredible fight. One of my favorite fights of the year. Ilia Topuria taking on Max Holloway. Ilia, undefeated power punchers, Georgia and Spanish fighter, coming off a massive knockout over Alexander Volkanovski, second round. Actually, I believe it was first round, or was second round. Point is, he was very smooth on his feet, incredible octagon control, good underrated defense with the way he moves his head and the way he gets in and out, I think, of the pocket is very, very impressive. Looking at him too, one thing that I think is very underrated about his game is the fact that he does have that wrestling background on top of everything. So if he does need to, he can go ahead and shoot for those takedowns if he has to. He can change levels. Max Holloway with incredible control, his long reach. We've seen him too, the huge knockout over Justin Gaethje. The key to him is basically keeping Topuria at the very edge of his punches, keeping him not letting him close the distance with those big haymakers, those massive body punches that I think Topuria, I don't want to say he's the best in the UFC because I don't like making super superlatives like that, but I think it's safe to say he might be a top 5 body puncher in the UFC as far as his ability to drive those hooks to the liver, the hooks even to the kidneys if he's throwing a right-handed hook to the body, the jabs on top of it, the uppercuts to the body, and then he mixes them with those heavy shots upstairs on top of it. His ability to just control distance and just wing those punches that's so fluid. They both brag about their boxing skills. That's kind of both of their bread and butters. And I'm not going to say that those will cancel each other out, like when you see two wrestlers go head-to-head, a la Usman and Colby, where they basically were wrestle-centric guys that ended up just brawling. I think what's going to happen is their boxing is going to be whose boxing is able to be more effective based on their other tools. Max, he's going to use the distance, pop, pop, pop. He might be the second. If Ilia was the best, you can make a case that Max Holloway might be the second best body puncher. They both rip the body absolutely beautifully. I think Max is going to be pop, 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 end of it, controlling the distance, sliding in and out of range, just pops out, then pops in. Topuria, a lot of head movement, a lot of explosive movements in and out. I think if he can explode in and fake those takedowns, it's going to make things harder for Max, and that's going to open it up. Ilia obviously is a power puncher. He's going to look to crack Max Holloway's chin, which has yet to be cracked in what feels like 1,000 fights. Even at just 32 years old, he's been in the UFC for so long. Obviously, Max, he's going to wear him down. He's going to basically, it's going to be the longer the fight goes on, it's going to be a death by 1,000 paper cuts, and it's going to add up, and he's going to crank it up. And if it does get to those last 10 seconds, we all know about the point down. So I love this fight. I can't wait to see it. I don't have a prediction on this one yet. I'm still kind of looking into it because the betting odds have Ilia as a minus 245 favorite and Max at like a plus 220, which I get. Ilia's the champion. He's looked dominant, but I think we're forgetting just how good Max Holloway is. And he hasn't really lost a step. I think the Volkanovski matchups arguably could have won the first one. Definitely won the second one. That's a terrible decision. Got absolutely clapped in the third one. Like, no doubt about that. So it's not like he was outside the third fight. It's not like Volkanovski just beat the piss out of him. It was very back and forth for those first two fights. And in my opinion, he surely won the second one. And I think you make a very good case he won the first one. Either way, he's far from washed. So that's what I think makes this very interesting. There's never been a 3-time champion in a division, I believe, besides Randy Couture, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't think no one's been a 3-time featherweight champion, that's for sure. So he'd have a chance to make a little bit of history with that as well. Can't wait for this fight. Maybe later in the week for Saturday, I'll have some best bets posted on our X page like I do with football, and I've done with some previous UFC events. But this is an incredible matchup. One of my favorites of the year. Two incredibly skilled, high-level fighters who both thrive on fighting. Neither one of them thrives on stalling, which I kind of joked about in one of our recent podcast episodes where I think they need to find a way to mitigate some of the stalling efforts. But that's a different story. You can go check out that podcast episode as well. But there is another marquee event on this UFC card. We have Khamzat Chimaev taking on Robert Whittaker. And really, the only question I have is, will Khamzat be in the octagon on Saturday? I'll kind of joking a little bit aside. He has not been very active between COVID, sickness, just every single thing possible seems to keep him out of the octagon, unfortunately. So that's kind of what if he makes it there, it's going to be one heck of a matchup because I want to see. We know Khamzat's game. He's a bulldozer. He's straightforward. He grapple, ground and pound, smash, big, heavy punches. But I'm curious to see because we saw him against Gilbert Burns. Gilbert survived that and then was able to turn it on him a little bit and made that a very back and forth, incredible fight. He wasn't able to get Gilbert down and hold him down, he didn't really try as hard either. He's going to shoot on Robert Whittaker if he's smart. You're not going to try and stand with him unless you can land a huge shot early. And at the same time, Robert Whittaker doesn't stand still. That's going to be hard. He is a snake. He is a cobra, the way he moves in and out of the octagon, the karate blitz style. Khamzat's going to try and catch him and time him on that entrance. Because if he's chasing Robert, I think that's going to put him in a little bit of danger. It's going to be hard to get that takedown. But if this fight does line up the way it's supposed to, it's going to be an incredible matchup. So this has been our first episode of MMA Mondays. I'll give probably some more predictions either on the podcast episode this Wednesday, or I'll post them on our X page with some bets to go along with it. But I love this fight card. This is one of my favorite ones of the year. And as I mentioned, Ilia and Max is going to be, it's my favorite fight on paper right now. So go ahead and let us know in the comments below who you think is going to win these fights and what you think is next for Francis. We all, I presume, want to see him versus John Jones. I'd love to see him versus Tom Aspinall. I think that's a very fun clash of styles and that they both have the ability to crush in one shot. But Aspinall is also a very elusive head movement guy, where Francis wings haymakers to death. So if Tom Bosley should weaves, he goes to sleep. Francis's head doesn't move a whole lot. So if Tom is able to evade those shots and he lands one of his bombs, interesting. Although Francis is shown to be very durable outside for the most part too. So there's a lot of fun matchups there. I hope we get to see at least one of them. But go and let us know in the comments below what you're thinking as well and what fights you want to see. Be sure to tune in to our live episode with me and my co-host Kelsey every Wednesdays, where we talk about what's going on in the wide world of sports, and subscribe to all of our social media pages so you don't miss a beat. We appreciate y'all for joining us, and we'll see you all again next time.